Welcome back to the Nest and Baby podcast. I'm Jasmine, founder of Nest and Baby, and I'm so grateful you're here. Whether you're expecting your first baby, preparing to welcome another little one into your family, or simply dreaming about motherhood one day, my hope is that this podcast becomes a place where you feel seen and very well informed. In today's podcast, I'm joined by Katharine Graves, one of the world's leading hypnobirthing educators and the founder of KG Hypnobirthing. For decades, she's helped thousands of women and families approach birth with greater confidence and trust in their own bodies. In this episode, we gently unpack what the KG Hypnobirthing Method is. We talk about the powerful connection between the mind and the body during labor, why fear can influence the birth experience, and how birth partners can actually make an incredible difference. So grab your comfort drink and let's dive into this beautiful conversation with Katharine Graves. Katharine, for those who are new to hypnobirthing, can you tell us a little about yourself and how you became so passionate about helping women to prepare for birth?
I'm so glad you didn't ask what's hypnobirthing because it's so difficult to define. But my name's Katharine Graves. I came to hypnobirthing by a load of coincidences. I think most people come to whatever they do by coincidences. But what I do is I help women have a far more comfortable and efficient birth. And people cannot believe the difference it makes until they've experienced it for themselves. Midwives who see a KG hypnobirthing birth for the first time say, well, I've never seen a birth like this. It is so different because most people's experience of birth comes from television and movies. And it's always a drama, and it's always somebody screaming around and writhing around in agony. So that's what they think birth has to be like that. It has to be like that, but it doesn't. It really doesn't. It can be the most amazing experience of a woman's life if she has proper information, makes logical choices, and is well prepared. But most women aren't.
And many people hear the word hypnobirthing, imagine women being hypnotized during labor, but
yes.
But what is hypnobirthing actually?
And it's a bit hippie-ish, and you spend the time sort of lying on the floor relaxing, and it's difficult to say what it means because actually the word is meaningless. Because as you say, people who've dived into it a little bit say, I've done hypnobirthing, but it didn't work. And they haven't done hypnobirthing. It's a bit like saying, I drive a car and it's a tiny Citroen. And they expect it to go like a Lamborghini, because it won't. And there are many different types of hypnobirthing. My definition of hypnobirthing is KG Hypnobirthing, which I and my organization teach. It is a 10 to 12 hour course, all based on logic and evidence. And that's when you get the information. Ideally, a couple come to it together. I have to say, the dads don't want to come. But they're nice people and they want to support her. But once they have come, they think it's absolutely amazing. And then after the course, there is practice to do. So you don't just sort of sit around and listen to somebody talking and then have the most amazing birth. You have to put something into it too, like anything. It's only 10 to 15 minutes a day, but in that practice, that's when the change takes place. So you get the information, you do the practice, and you can't prove that it works until you do it. But it has the most amazing outcomes. Women, not all, of course, we cannot promise a pain-free birth. Some women do have a pain-free birth. We can promise a far more comfortable birth. And plenty of women will have a baby in, well, for a normal, healthy woman, having a first baby, you might have your baby in under 8 hours, perhaps 5 hours, perhaps 3 hours. And it will be a great deal more comfortable, sometimes totally pain-free.
Mm.
But you have to put in the effort first.
Mm-hmm. And what would you say makes KG hypnobirthing so special and kind of different from most of other
Well,
hypnobirthing?
a lot of hypnobirthing classes are just maybe an evening of relaxation, and it's lovely and it's really nice. But for more than 50 years, probably 70 years, people have been learning breathing and relaxation, and it's absolutely great. But if that was all that was needed, then what I do would never have developed because it wouldn't have been needed. But this is, of course, KG hypnobirthing includes wonderful relaxations, deep relaxations. We have 10 of them in the class, some just to listen to in the class, some are to practice every day at home. There's one audio to listen to each night as you go to sleep, and they're absolutely lovely. It's all there, the breathing and the relaxation, but there's so much more to it than that. Because plenty of women come to the end of their pregnancy, and throughout their pregnancy, all their caregivers are really nice and say, yes, we love to see natural birth. We really support you in a natural birth. And they get to 37, 30 weeks, and they say, now we're going to make the appointment for your induction. But I didn't want one. Well, your baby will die if you don't, or something like that. And they're not prepared. They don't know how the system works. We prepare them. I mean, we can even help them at that late stage, but it would be so much better if they came a little bit earlier and did their daily practice. But they don't think they need it until the reality of how maternity services work hits them. And in Spain, it's even more medicalized than it is in the UK. I mean, the UK is pretty bad. The further south you go, I think, the more medicalized it gets. But even in Spain, there is a home birth organization that will support women who want to give birth at home, which in general, and that's another thing people find very difficult to believe, is actually safer and better. And I've trained several people who teach in Spain and Portugal. But the further south you get, it seems to be it becomes more medicalized in general.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And this is very interesting for me to know, because as you know, we live in southern Spain now, although I am from Germany with Iranian parents. But yeah. But what would you say, Katharine, are the biggest misconceptions about hypnobirth in general or KG hypnobirth? And what would you say are the greatest effects on the women?
Well, the greatest misconception is that hypnobirthing is hypnobirthing and it doesn't matter which one you go to. And it does I mean, I'm not saying that I'm the only person. We have trained many teachers all over the world in KG hypnobirthing. But if you think, oh, well, there's a lady down the road who can teach you in 5 hours and it's much cheaper, why should I go to that? It's not the same. We do also have an online course that people can do anywhere. Of course, it's nicer to go and meet somebody and have a class face to face, but the material in the online course is identical to material if I teach somebody who comes to me. So it is very good. What is a misconception about hypnobirthing? But it is just a bit of breathing and relaxation, and it's rather hippie-ish. And it can't really make that much difference, and why do I need it anyway?
And what would you say are the greatest effects? Is it releasing fear? What effects does it have on the nervous system?
Most certainly, the 4 things that are different to what went before, the biggest of all is exactly what you said, releasing fear. Because when we're afraid, we produce adrenaline and we tense up. When we produce adrenaline, we cannot produce oxytocin, which is the hormone needed for labor to progress. And when we produce oxytocin in the brain, that triggers the production of endorphins, which makes labor more comfortable. And there are oxytocin receptors in the uterus, which makes labor more efficient. So it's logically, biologically hormonally more efficient and more comfortable. The next thing, that's the biggest difference, I think. The next thing is the clear, simple daily practice. Absolutely vital. I was speaking to a mum a couple of weeks ago, and she had done hypnobirthing. She'd done my course. She'd had quite a good birth, but not quite the birth she had hoped for. And I said, well, did you do the practice? She said, well, she was in America. My husband didn't come to the course with me. He's out of state a lot, you know. Well, you can do it on Zoom or there's generally one weekend that they could make it together if they really wanted to. And they can do the practice together on Zoom if he is out of state a lot. You know, it's lovely if you can do it physically together. But that practice together is so important. It brings the couple closer together. The dad knows that he's been a useful part in how his child enters the world, and he wants to be, but he doesn't quite know how to be unless somebody tells him. And I'm sure it deepens his relationship with his own baby when it's born. Mm-hmm. And they absolutely love it once they come. So that's an important part, the role for the father. The daily practice, very simple, 1A4 sheet, only 10 minutes. But my goodness, that's the important bit. That's when the change takes place. And there's something else that I've forgotten at the moment. We've got the dad, we've got the practice, we've got the release of fear. When I think of the other thing, I know there are 4 things.
It's okay.
The whole thing is.
Can you explain a bit more about the fear, tension, pain cycle and why it's so important for women to understand it?
There's a very simple little exercise we do in class that you can do now. If you hold up one hand as if you're holding a tennis ball and tense your fingers. Can you move your fingers? Not really, can you? If they're tense. Mm-hmm. Whereas if you exactly the same position, if you relax your fingers, then it's easy. Mm-hmm. That's what fear does. Mm-hmm. And so you can see that if you're frightened, your muscles have tensed up and your body doesn't work. And when it does work, it's sort of working against itself and it's more painful. You can see a good example is a sportsman. It's a good example for the dads too. If you have a footballer who's taking the last kick in a penalty shootout in a really important championship in the final, and everybody knows that he can kick for goal, he's done it thousands of times, it always goes into that top corner. But in that last kick in a penalty shootout, it's not a matter of his ability to shoot, to kick, it's a matter of what's going on in his head. And if you're tense, it'll go wide. And it's exactly like that. When we tense up, it's not just, it's also, the muscles of the uterus are working very hard in labor. They're very powerful muscles. They're working to absolute capacity. Now, if you see an athlete who's running, maybe been running a marathon or something, sometimes they collapse with cramp and it's really painful. Why? Because the blood is not reaching the muscles that need it in order to work. And in labor, the blood needs to go to the uterine muscles. But if we're frightened and we tense up, we have what we call the flight-fight response. It's really the fear, freeze, flight, fight response. Great response for keeping you safe when you meet a bear or a tiger. Not very useful in labor. I mean, running and fighting are irrelevant, but freezing is hugely relevant. It's your first response to fear. You freeze up. And then if you're frightened, you produce the hormone adrenaline. And when you produce adrenaline, we all know what adrenaline feels like. It's when you get a sudden shock. It's almost like an electric shock down your back, isn't it? And your heart starts to pump and your eyes are out on stalks and your heart is pumping because it's pumping your blood to your arms and your legs, ready to run and fight. great for dealing with tigers, not so good when you're in labor, because you actually need the blood in your internal organs, in your reproductive organs. So if your mind is calm, we're producing adrenaline. And we produce adrenaline particularly at special times in our life. We produce a peak of adrenaline when we fall in love. We produce a peak of adrenaline when we make love. And the biggest peak of all is just after a woman's given birth to a baby. And when we produce adrenaline, there are, as I said, adrenaline receptors in the uterus. So the uterus works better. These powerful muscles work better. And because you have these powerful muscles working, we also, nature is so clever, isn't it? We produce the hormone endorphins, which is nature's comfort hormone. So yes, the body is working more powerfully, but the mind is also producing a hormone to make you more comfortable. And those powerful, so the blood supply stays in the internal organs to these powerful muscles that need a good blood supply. And it's also the blood supply which the nutrients and the oxygen go through the placenta to the baby. So the baby's in a better place. And it is all so beautifully created to work well. What we do is we get in the way. The whole of our society, the whole of our maternity services get in the way. And if I teach hypnobirthing to a woman, KG Hypnobirthing, I actually can't teach her anything at all that her mind and her body don't know already. She is perfectly created to give birth efficiently and comfortably. But what I can help her to do is get out of the way and let it work in the way it's designed to do. And the whole of our society, everything we've learnt from when we're tiny, gets in the way. That's what we need to do. It's no just good saying, oh, I'm going to relax. It's a bit more to it than that.
Mm-hmm. Let's talk about that. Let's dive deep into, you said that a lot of our environment can get in the way of our nature, basically. And you also said that a lot of maternity services. Would you mind sharing a bit about your experience in that?
Well, just as one little example, I met a little girl, she's only about 2, a while back. And she said, Mummy's going to have a baby and it's going to hurt. What is that child going to be like by the time she's 30? She won't even know she's got that idea. It will be so deeply ingrained, and all the fear and all the tension that goes with it. And all the stories that a woman gets from her friends, the medical profession. I think the main purpose of a medical profession, and of course they're needed sometimes, of course there are emergencies when they're wonderful, but the medical profession is frightened. They're frightened of litigation. And there is a lot of litigation when it comes to birth. And so their main concern is stopping litigation, stopping disciplinary action. And if they have done everything that they should, according to the guidelines, then they're safe. But guidelines should be guidelines. They're not set rules. They're just sort of a checklist that's useful so that you don't forget anything. And they're a checklist for midwives and the doctors. But it's up to a mother what she does. It's her choice. But she doesn't get that impression. Oh, you're not allowed to do that at this hospital. Oh, you have to be induced at 38 weeks. And that sort of thing. And very often, these things that are said to her are said in a very scary way and without any evidence. And that's how the services work. And people are frightened. There are so many women. I mean, in the UK, the caesarean rate for first-time mums is about 50%. Some places it's higher. I'm sure it's similar in Spain. the induction rate is about 50%. Well, I do not believe that half the women are created in such a way that they can't give birth. I mean, it's crazy. Of course they can. But the women who go through this process, who are frightened into agreeing to procedures which in advance they would say, oh, I don't want that. And then they agree. And a woman will agree to anything if she's told it's best for her baby. She might choose to run a risk for herself, but never for her baby. Then she has a ghastly experience, which is so traumatic, she would say, I would never go near that place again. And as a result of that, there are quite a lot of women who free birth for a second baby, who birth without any medical support at all, because they had such a dreadful experience the first time. And I know women who've gone to, had a group of friends and they're all having babies at the same time. And she's the only one who had a natural birth, a physiological birth. And all her friends who went to different classes or didn't go to any classes at all, they have cesareans, they're induced, and they have a traumatic experience. And it's quite wicked. I'm sure, I would regard induction of labour as a worse pandemic than COVID ever was, and doing far more harm. And I think we will look back in 50 years' time and say, why on earth did they do that? Because it is, except in very rare cases, so harmful.
Wow.
That's what I see around me. Is that what you see around you? Or maybe you're not in that world yet. I don't know.
Yeah, no, that I can only ask questions from my bubble, from my perspective, from my uneducated perspective so far. But I find it so fascinating and shocking in the same time to hear what you are saying. And can you please explain a little bit, Katharine, what kind of effects birth has on life later on the women who's giving birth and also on the child? We don't need to dive too deep to it if you don't want to, but maybe just a little bit.
Yes. Well, nobody can understand the change in their lives until they've had a baby. They know there will be big changes. Of course they know that. But I think when the baby's born, they sort of, I didn't know it would be quite like this. You cannot understand an experience until you've had it, can you? It's an experience. In fact, I want to set up another short course for how you deal with the time after you've given birth, because there's lots of attention for women when they're pregnant, but little after they've given birth. And it can be very lonely. You don't have your family around you in Spain, do you?
No, I don't.
Exactly. If you had a baby, you'd be effectively on your own. Your mum might come and stay for 2 weeks or something.
Yeah.
That you cannot understand the difference it makes to your life. Oh, I'm so sorry.
That's okay.
You cannot understand the difference it makes to your life. But then nobody can understand an experience until they've had it. If you tried to explain to somebody who'd never made love what it was like, you can't, can you?
Oh, yeah.
So the change in your life is unbelievable. And for most women, very, very sadly, it's the most traumatic experience of their lives. And it doesn't have to be that way. One of the audios we have on our website is to help a woman who's had a traumatic birth release birth trauma. And actually, in the last few months, I've made that absolutely free of charge, because there's so many women who need it so badly that they just need it. It wasn't very expensive anyway, but if it's free, they might be more likely, I hope, to download it. You see, it can be the most amazing experience of a woman's life. On our website, we have birth story after birth story. Women who say, oh, I'd do it again tomorrow. It was so fantastic. And that sort of thing, which is, but they have to make right choices and be logical. And quite often, it is a partner, a husband, who influences you. Because it's quite funny, actually. They totally change their view of birth at the course, even the dads. But occasionally a mother has come up to me and said, I'd love to have my baby at home, but he doesn't want me to. And I sort of think, how dare he? He's not having his baby. In fact, when I put it online, somebody said, well, tell him to go to hospital and you stay at home. But so I put my little story up on Instagram. And you know how many responses I got? 750,000. There are so many women who instinctively they want to stay at home in their safe place. Absolutely perfectly animal instinct. And he says, partly he doesn't want to be responsible. He wants to palm it off to somebody who knows what they're doing. But then they have the two words, what if? But what if something happens and you need a cesarean and the theatre's just down the corridor? Well, actually, a cesarean is roughly 5 times as likely to be needed if a woman plans to give birth in hospital than if she plans to give birth at home. And yet, the general feeling in society is that if a woman says she's going to give birth at home, oh, you're mad. Isn't it dangerous? This is very selfish. You're stupid. And all that sort of, and they're not actually, logically, for a normal, healthy woman. And I have to keep saying, sometimes a hospital is appropriate. Of course, it's wonderful that support is there when it is needed. But quite often it creates the problem that it then purports to save her from. What do you do if you had a cat that was having kittens? You wouldn't take it to the vet, would you?
No.
It would scratch, it would bite, and nothing would happen.
Yeah.
Until it got home and it could hide under the bed. Well, we are mammals just like a cat is.
That's interesting. I was just thinking because I have a dog, a female.
Sorry, I should have chosen a dog to talk
That's
about.
okay. But you're absolutely right. Yeah, I wouldn't. I wouldn't if I saw my little dog Ginger, if she would start giving birth, I would not just panically take her to the hospital. I would just give her space and just let her be.
If she had been in labour for a very long time and seemed to be in distress, then you might call in the vet.
Yeah.
But it's very unusual to need to do that. Very unusual.
Yeah. And Katharine, would you say that the KG Hypnobirthing Method helps women to make more confident decisions as well?
Certainly more knowledgeable decisions. You see, when you have the information you need, and you undoubtedly have all the information you need, then you feel in control. I don't mean in control, I mean, I feel in control. Every woman I teach, when I ask her what she wants about birth, she says, I want to be in control. And when you're in control, you feel confident. In order to do that, first of all, you need to know what your choices are. That's the information. You need to know your choices. Then you feel in control. If you're in control, you feel confident. If you feel confident, you produce hormones that make you calm. And when you're calm, you produce the hormones which give you a comfortable birth. So you know your choices, puts you in control, gives you confidence, so you feel calm and you have a more comfortable birth.
Beautifully said.
But you need to know, it's all very well for me to say that, but it's quite different to understand the reason for each step and how it works and fits together. And then it's real for you. And then you think, oh, well, in that case, it's worth doing the practice if that's what I get. If I just said, go away and do 10 minutes a day practice, it probably wouldn't. Whereas if you've got the logic and the reasons, then for that, you probably do, because it's worth it.
And when would be the best time to start with the KG Hypnobirthing Method?
It doesn't really matter. There is never, I don't think you need to do it before the second trimester. That would be completely unnecessary. I have taught a mum, she was 41 weeks, and she suddenly thought, oh my goodness, I need help. And she came to the class. I'd rather teach a little bit earlier. Actually, she only got the first day of the class because she relaxed so much that the baby was born that night. But ideally, I would say in the second trimester, but most women come in the third trimester because they sort of haven't quite got around to really focusing on birth until it gets a little bit nearer. But it doesn't matter. Just do it. Because it's lovely. I love teaching in person, but anybody can just download the online course, which is very reasonable. I mean, in the UK, it's £49, which must be about, I don't know, $55, $60 euros. It's $60 in the States, which is not that different. So it's not a lot of money. I know there are some people who genuinely can't afford that, but they've got a lot of free stuff on Instagram. But anybody at any time can download that course and sit down and watch it. You know, if you've got plenty of time, you just do 20 minutes an evening, and that way you'll probably get your husband involved as well. My worry with the online course is that a woman will sit down and watch it and maybe call her husband over for the interesting bits, and he hasn't really got it unless he's watched the whole of the course. But it's better than nothing.
And would you say it matters what birth you're choosing to have, if you can, if you are confident enough to choose water birth or home birth and water birth, is it, you can use it always, right?
You can use it always. You can use it, that mindset, if you're having a cesarean, it makes a difference. Or even if you're not planning a cesarean, but it turns out that you need one, it makes a difference because you're informed, you understand, you have been a part of that decision making, and you completely understand it. You can see that it's best, and you can still use the techniques you've learned. But most people who I teach come because they want a vaginal physiological birth. Not everyone will get it, mainly because they're put under such pressure to agree to interventions. More could get it, but the vast majority do. I mean, I did a survey, but that's not answering the question you asked. I think the three things you need to have the best possible birth is do the KG hypnobirthing class, have your baby at home in a birth pool. You've really got it set up and have the best possible experience if you do those three things. But there are some lovely birth centres around, and most people come to my class thinking, well, I'll go to a birth centre. They're really nice, they're very homely, and the operating theatre is just down the corridor. But they would actually be better to have their baby at home. And I don't know how it works in Spain, but in the UK, there is an argument for booking a home birth because it keeps your options open. You see, if you've booked your birth at home, as I always tell mums, you can always pick up the phone at the last minute, call the hospital and say, I'd rather come in. Now, I know perfectly well in practice that they won't want to, but they can do if they want to. But if they've booked to go to a hospital, even if it's a lovely, homely birth centre, if at the last minute they think, oh, I wish I didn't have to leave my home, which is quite likely, they can't change their mind that way because the midwife isn't set up to come to their house, and it's in theory they can, but in practice they can't. So if a woman wants to keep her options open, I always say just book the home birth. It's very easy to change the other way around at the last minute, and you've kept your options open, because of all these choices that women are making when they're pregnancy, they actually haven't a clue what they're talking about. They've never had a baby. They don't know what labour feels like. And they can't possibly. So it makes a lot of sense to make the choices that keep your options open. And then when the reality of labour starts, you can do what you like. And probably what you will like is curl up in a small, safe place at home, ideally in a birth pool, and have your baby.
That's very good to know. That's very, very important. Yeah. And would you say, Katharine, in your experience, because I don't know if there are any studies on that, is the hypnobirthing method, the KG hypnobirthing method, or hypnobirthing in general, so to say, does it prevent, or can it prevent epidurals, you would say?
An epidural is almost, well, not always, but very frequently needed for an induced labour, because an induction is far more painful. So even without hypnobirthing, you are less likely to need an epidural if you haven't been induced. It's the inductions which cause a great deal of the problems. Increased epidurals, increased cesareans, increased assisted delivery, forceps and ventouse. And women are told that their baby is at risk if they don't get induced by a certain date, and there's very little evidence for it. All the mums, the couples I teach, they have a whole list of questions to ask. Not that it's not so much you must ask every question, but it's a sort of mindset to be of a sort of thing you would want to be asking. And one of the ones is to ask about the risks of any intervention that's proposed and the benefits of not doing it. And also, she will be told the benefits of the induction, but I have never, ever, ever heard a woman told the risks of the induction. So what she will be told is the benefits of the procedure, the interventions, and the risks of not doing it, and the benefits of the induction, the risks to her baby of not being induced. But never, that's not a full picture. It's only half a picture. A woman who agrees to an induction, I don't think is ever giving informed consent, which is legally what she should give to any procedure, because she hasn't been given the full information. And it's very interesting, in the UK, and I don't know if this relates to other countries, that the obstetricians are told by their governing body, the Royal College of Obstetricians and Gynecologists, that they must explain to a woman what the condition is that they feel she needs some treatment for, the likely outcome, and also the risks of not taking the treatment. But the obstetricians are not told that they must explain to her the benefits of not taking the treatment, only the risks. It's not a full picture, is it?
No, it's not. And
And
how?
that's-
And how?
No,
Yes,
you
it
can.
is. Sorry. No, it's all right. Carry on.
I was just going to say that's what women, a situation for women in this country, and I'm sure in a great many other countries too.
Yeah, yeah. And how can women advocate for themselves more? How, because I know that when it comes to medical questions, it can happen very quickly that you feel intimidated, and especially when it's about your baby, oh my God, it's my
That's
baby.
why she needs to come to the class and get all the information. She doesn't even know the questions to ask otherwise. I mean, just as an example, if you had cancer, at least in the UK, and I'm sure it's the same in other countries, before there's any treatment, you sit down for probably an hour's consultation with a specialised cancer nurse. No rush. And she gives you all the information, what your options of treatment are for, what the possible side effects, for example, if you have chemotherapy. And if at the end you decide, I don't think I want chemo, nobody's going to put you under pressure, but you made the wrong choice. They will respect they've given you the full information before you start. They will respect your choice. I mean, for example, if I was your age, I would probably choose chemo as well as anything else going. Whereas at my age, I think it would be crazy to have chemo. You'd spend the rest of your life in a horrible state. You'd do much better to have a surgery, and maybe it would be a slightly shorter life, but it would be a perfectly normal and healthy life. You make your choice. But you get the full information, but you don't get put under pressure. It's not the same when you have a baby. You don't get the full information, and you are put under pressure. And that's terrible. I mean, and it's thing in birth is it's so subtle that tiny things can make a big difference. For example, if as labor gets more intense, the midwife starts talking, it's more painful. Now, midwives, they're nice people, and they probably chattel away to keep her mind occupied. My mums don't need to have their mind occupied because they've got techniques to use. But if somebody talks to you, the neocortex, the thinking bit of the brain, has to take in the information. When the neocortex swings into action, that triggers adrenaline. That inhibits oxytocin, so it makes the labor more painful and longer. So ideally, I mean, it's partners are in on this really. All dads are trained. Just politely ask the midwife that she'd much prefer silence. The number of women who said, when it got more painful, it was when the midwife started to talk. So you wouldn't think that you don't think of talking as an intervention. You think of somebody with a needle as an intervention or something like that. But these tiny things have repercussions all the way down the line and lead to bigger interventions. So if the midwife started chatting, the mother found it more painful, then she might want an epidural, and then she's more likely to need a cesarean, just because the midwife started to talk.
Are there other interventions that don't really look like interventions, but you would say, yes, this is definitely an intervention? Does any other thing come to mind?
I mean, one thing that women are frequently offered if their pregnancy is a little bit longer is a membrane sweep, which is the midwife puts 2 fingers into the cervix and massages inside the cervix to try to trigger the hormone prostaglandin, which softens the cervix and starts labor. Women are screaming for a sweep. When can I have my sweep? I want my baby to come. 37 weeks. Can I have a sweep yet? But it's an induction of labor. Of course it's an induction of labor because it's trying to make the baby come before it's ready. And the thing is that if the cervix in pregnancy is quite it's a little knobble that sticks down into your vagina like this cartilage on the end of your nose. And as labor gets closer, it gets softer, like your lip or your earlobe, and begins to sort of point towards the way out. Now, if the cervix is hard and knobbly, sweep is not going to be painful when somebody tries to get their fingers into it, and it's not going to work. So, because plainly the body isn't ready. So there's absolutely no point doing it. On the other hand, if the cervix has started to soften, maybe even open a tiny little bit, it's a great deal more comfortable to have a sweep. But it's not needed because the body is moving in that way anyway. So why do a sweep at all? Either it won't work, the body's not ready, so it doesn't work, so there's no point, and it's painful, and it's stressful, and there might be a bit of bleeding and all sorts of things. Or the body is moving in that way anyway, so it's not necessary because she's going to give birth to a baby within a couple of days, so you don't need a sweep. And yet, they're absolutely routine. But it is an induction of labor. It does cause stress. It can cause, anything in the vagina can cause an infection. I know it's not likely. But it's stressful, it's meddly, and it's just an extra thing that you really don't need. You do much better to go home in hot weather and sit with your feet in a bowl of cool water and read a book or lie down and have a little rest or something.
Would you say that the KG Hypnobirthing method can soften the cervix and also deepen your intuition to make better decisions. I mean, the physiological part of it, and then also the mindset part of it.
I think you need to make intelligent decisions when you're pregnant. You need to get the information because so many, it's like the people who say, well, I'll go into hospital just in case. It's not logical. It's not as safe. A lot of people will say that. So you need to get the facts. You're 5 times as likely to have a cesarean in hospital. Oh, well, maybe I will stay at home then. That's logical. It goes against what you might say your feelings are, because your feelings are built up all your life and they're utterly illogical. But if you make those sensible, evidence-based choices, the whole thing is set up properly. And then when you come to actually have your baby, you can just trust your instinct because you made the right choices already. Does that make sense?
Yeah, definitely. Yeah, that's beautifully said.
But if people will say to them, oh, it's all right, you can just trust your instinct. Nah.
Yeah, because
what they really mean that you're going to do what you feel most comfortable without thinking about it.
yeah, and I would also say I have in the past kind of confused my instinct for fear and my fear for instinct. So
Yes.
if you are more educated on the topic, you can still have your intuition and your instinct, but also be educated in the same time and then combine it and then make beautiful decisions, I would say.
Yes.
Katharine, talking about the partners in hypnobirthing and in your method especially, to have a short dive into this, I would love to know what are the common mistakes partners make that could, lead to a bit more tension in the woman's body?
Well, they're lovely people and they want to help and they want to be involved. I mean, the traditional role for a father, when labour took place, he wouldn't have been there. He would have been out having a drink with his friends. But these days, most fathers are there and they want to be useful. What do I do? What shall I say? And you see, it's not so much a matter of what you do. It's his state of mind. If he's learnt the breathing that she's doing and he's just automatically quietly doing it, she'll be automatically copying him. If he's feeling calm and just being there, and she's got the person there who she knows and loves, who is calm and supportive, it's not what he does. It's his state of being, which is far more important than what he does. Of course, if he's well informed, I mean, if, for example, the midwife starts to talk at a time and he knows that's going to give her more pain, but he'll just politely say, she'd really appreciate silence. Little things like that. If the shift changes and a new midwife comes in, that's a little shock. There's nothing wrong with a midwife, but it's a new person. And he can just, if a new midwife's come in, say, let's just do a relaxation or something to get her back into the state that she was in before. There are not loads of complicated, we teach them a very gentle backstroking, which is lovely, but it really isn't so much what you do. It's a matter of feeling supported by the person you know and love. Because in the UK, at least, you see a different midwife every time you go for an antenatal visit, if you go to a hospital. Now, it's known that one-to-one care from a known midwife is best. There's been lots of research on that. But the health services can't provide that. But for one person who does give one-to-one care throughout pregnancy and birth and beyond is a partner. It may not be medical care, but actually birth is not a medical event. It's nice that there's medical backup when it's needed, but it's a natural event. It's things like people will say, well, how will I know when to push? Every woman asks, how will I know when to push? To which the answer is, well, how do you know when to sneeze? How do you know when to yawn? Well, I do. Well, yes, It's exactly the same. It's not, it's because they haven't done it before. Their brain is saying, what about this? What about that? But their body knows perfectly. It's just the brain is getting in a tizzy about it.
That is fascinating. The example with sneezing and yawning. Wow. Yeah.
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 I mean, but you can get more lavatorial and say, how do you know when you need to do a poo? There's a point at which you think you might, then you know you do, and then you couldn't stop it if you tried. And it's awfully similar to having a baby.
And we talked about pushing. Would you say that hypnobirthing can help, or especially your method can help to prevent any cuts in the vaginal area, any wounds when birthing? Would you say that?
Tearing, I've just done a little survey on that, and I haven't really collated the result because it's a thing that, but I'm sure it's far less than in the normal event. Partly what affects this is the position you're in is so important. If you're kneeling in a birth pool, much bigger pelvic capacity. Now, if you're talking about actual physical cuts and episiotomy, those very often go if you need forceps or a vacuum extraction, because you have to do the cut to get the forceps in. But that's far more likely if you've had an epidural. And that's far more likely if you've had an induced labor. So it's not something which, though it could do, just suddenly happens that you need it. It's far more likely to be a result of something that went before, and something that went before, and something that went before. And there was a wonderful obstetrician, which people haven't heard of so much now. He died a few years ago. He was the man who invented the birth pool. Dr. Michel Audin, wonderful man. And he used to say, the first intervention is leaving your own front door. It's the first unnatural thing that a woman does when she's having a baby.
Wow. Wow, that's a statement. Yeah.
Oh, he's wonderful. I mean, he could always back up everything he said with incredible knowledge. But he was right.
Yeah. And Katharine, is there a birth story that has stayed with you over the years and kind of perfectly illustrates the power of your method?
Somebody's popping into my mind. This was a long time ago. I think she just about got her due date. And she didn't feel like her husband was a gardener. He worked in the garden of a big house near them. And it was in May, a nice sunny day. And she thought, I'd really like to be near him. Well, that tells you something in itself. So she went and sat in the garden by the stream and read a book while he was working. Absolutely perfect. It's like little birds building nests. And we always say, have a beautiful picture of a rose, which is soft and open. And if your mind is thinking of soft and open, your body is doing soft and open. But her favorite flower was a peony. And the peonies were coming into bloom. And she picked a peony to take home. So she had this beautiful peony that she put in a vase at home. And she went into labor that night and had an incredibly straightforward and quick birth with no pain. But she had done everything right. It is just so amazing. It's an interesting thing that I observed the other day about induction of labor. I live in the country, and I was in the garden, and at the moment there are lots of little nests in the hedge around. You can hear the little tweeting. And I thought for a moment, all these mother birds sit on their eggs patiently and wait. They don't start pecking at the eggs to try and get the chicks into the world quicker than the chicks. And the only thing that breaks those eggs is the chicks from the inside pecking. You never get a mother bird pecking at an egg. They just sit there and wait.
What a beautiful analogy. Yeah.
I never thought of it before, but it's so true, isn't it?
I was just about to ask you what favorite analogies you have to nature about birth, but that is the one. Yeah.
You don't take to the vet.
Mhm,
All mammals curl up in a small, safe place to have their baby.
mhm,
We're a mammal.
mhm. Yeah, yeah.
We think we know better. I mean, people say to me sometimes, "Where did you have your babies?" I had all my babies in hospital because I thought it was best. When I say I thought it was best, I didn't think at all. I assumed it was best. Now, it has to be said that birth was a great deal less medicalized then than it is now. But I mean, with what I know now, I would undoubtedly have had my babies at home. But that's what you did, wasn't it? Go to hospital.
Mhm.
And there were some things that were better then. It was far less medicalized, and some things which were not as good as we have now. We didn't have birth pools, and you were flat on your back in bed.
Mhm.
But I did not think for 1 second. I made that choice without one iota of thought.
Wow, assuming and thinking is a difference, right?
But there is.
Yeah, yeah, right, yeah. Can you tell us a bit about what women can learn in your program? A little bit about the modules, because I know you also said about the positions in birth. What can you give us a little bit of an overview? What we
Well,
can learn?
sort of. The principle, I sometimes, it's the course is in 4 parts, and I liken it sometimes to building a house. If you're building a house, you start with the foundations. So with the course, we start with the foundations, the background stuff, but may not be directly relevant to when you give birth. But if you don't know it, you can't build a firm house on it. Things like hormones, how the mind works, how the body works, the muscles of the uterus, and all that stuff. You really, really need that information. And in fact, when I train midwives, they often say it ought to be part of our training. It's so simple and so logical and so amazing. So that's the first part of the course. And then in the second session, we do a lot of relaxations and breathing and things because that's what people have come for. And it's absolutely lovely. That's a bit like putting the structure on the foundations. This is what you do. You have a lovely, now that you've got firm foundations, you can have a nice secure structure on top of it. Having built your structure, you've got a lovely house, but it's not really terribly comfortable to live in until you've furnished it. So in the third session, we furnish it. And that is when you learn all about how maternity services work, what an induction really is, what it involves, what its outcomes might be, the questions to ask, and all that stuff which you need to put into the house before you can live in it comfortably. And having done all of that, then you can go in and live in your beautiful house on a firm foundation, safe structure, comfortable furnishing, and you can go in and live in it. And that's when you give birth. And those first 3 processes, in a way, need you to think about them. And it must be logical, not for relaxation so much, but every other bit of it. It's been said that the conscious mind is a faithful servant. The unconscious mind is a sacred gift. We live in a society that worships the servant and has forgotten the gift. But it's awfully nice to have a servant to do the heavy work like building the foundations and putting up a structure and carrying the furniture in. But then once that's all done, then you can rely on the sacred gift.
That's beautifully said. I love that metaphor. It's beautiful.
Yes, isn't it? Yes.
Yeah, it is.
That was meant to be Einstein that said that. I don't know if it really was, but anyway,
Yeah,
people say it was Einstein.
it's beautiful. We slowly coming to an end, Katharine.
Yeah,
If listeners remember only one thing from today's conversation, what would you like the message to be?
that's a difficult one. I think get well informed and ask questions and be strong.
Mhm.
because the pressure's on a pregnant woman to agree to interventions that earlier in her pregnancy she would have said she didn't want. But yes, when it comes to it, she does, because of the pressure she's put under. Get well informed, ask questions, be strong. I know that's 3 things and not 1, but they're all related, aren't they?
Yeah, they are. Yeah. Thank you so much. Where can women and everyone interested find you?
Well, our website is kghypnobirthing.com. And if you want to go straight to the online course, there's a short link, which is kghb.org/KG online. That takes us straight to the course.
Yeah, we will link everything below also in the descriptions of the videos. Wonderful. Thank you so much, Katharine. It was a pleasure to talk to you. It was an honor to talk to you. You're very, very
pleasure to talk to you. I can go on a bit.
Yeah. Thank you so much.
And thank you too.